we are going to be hearing a lot more about disinformation and elections, not only in the U.S., but abroad. Let's take a deeper dive into that. And joining us to get his insight is Joseph Williams, a former senior editor at U.S. News and World Report. Joseph, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Okay. Who's, the obvious question, can social media companies do anything to safeguard elections against misinformation? And that's going to be maybe. I mean, what's the answer, and how do people really safeguard themselves?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. It's a strong maybe, and it's even less strong now that social media companies have been given the green light by the Supreme Court to say what they want and to keep government at bay, even if they spew disinformation. Now, not only accelerating that trend was the fact that some of the social media companies have pared back in the wake of the pandemic and in subsequent years on their online content moderation. They're not doing as many, they don't have as many, they're not hiring as many people to keep an eye on what might be disinformation and misinformation. And further compounding that situation is the rise of artificial intelligence. You've got deep fakes that are going to be going on in the election. You've got misinformation alongside of that. Plus, no one actually knows who to trust. And it's very difficult to get people in a news literate mindset, especially so late or so close to the elections.
Yeah, in some cases, people want to believe the information, and in other cases, they, if they see something, they think this can't be real. What's the best way for the public to really get to the root of it and find out, is this authentic information or is this just a load of junk?
Well, yeah, the junk is winning so far. It's far outpacing legitimate information. But what people need to do in order to protect themselves against misinformation and disinformation, number one, is to familiarize yourself with local election rules, where the polls are, when they open, when they close, who's running. The second thing is to vary their media diet and not just get all their information from TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, or what have you on social media. Vary that diet. Go to some legitimate, some well-known, some well-sourced web pages, BBC, CGTN, New York Times, some well-established newspapers and news organizations to vary that media diet and get different perspectives. And that makes it a little bit easier to sort through what's real, what's fake. But the third thing to do is make sure that you take a break from social media from time to time. A lot of countries have election laws where there are blackout periods ahead of an election. Give people a chance to reflect and think about where they're going to cast their vote. That's all recommended by the experts. It's all very, very doable with very, very little cost. And with people who have cell phones to begin with, it shouldn't be that much of a stretch to take those recommendations to heart.
Yeah, that's good. I haven't really heard that one too much, but that seems like a great idea. Okay, we know that campaigns are in the business of winning elections, and dirty tricks are a time-honored tradition, at least here in the United States. So what kind of regulations do you think should be out there, whether it be from the government or just down to perhaps a different entity, to create and combat this ever-changing tech landscape?
Well, here in the U.S., you put your head on, you hit the nail on the head, but rather, is that we don't really have a whole lot of regulation when it comes to media and when it comes to disinformation. We had opportunities to do so in Congress. That went nowhere because of the partisan split. So now it's kind of a Wild West situation. And if you'll recall, it's already starting to seep into the United States. We had a situation in the New Hampshire primary back in the winter where recordings of Joe Biden, or Joe Biden, as I should say, went out to prospective voters giving misinformation on when the campaign, when the date of the actual vote was. And it turned out that it was an organization that no one had ever heard of, that was not sanctioned by the state. The owners of that organization got brought up on criminal charges, and I think the resolution of that case is still pending. But you see the opportunity for chicanery here. So there should be laws. I for one, would favor something like happens in Israel, in France, and in Australia, where you have a 24-hour blackout between the election day and the final day of the campaign, where you've got media standards that prohibit certain things from happening, where you have a broader set of regulations that keep elections from saying things that aren't true. But I think first and foremost, the number one rule that we need right now is crack down on disinformation on social media and regulations around AI.
Look, it's no secret. In the U.S., we have one candidate, Donald Trump, who has a history of simply not telling the truth. And when you combine that with these elements that can take place on social media, how does one protect themselves? I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, Joseph, that are being spent on races and also issues, whether it be environmental, things of that nature.
And adding to the headache, a lot of the money that's fueling those campaigns is dark money that's not traceable. And if it is traceable, the Federal Election Commission here in Washington, D.C. is relatively toothless. They can cite some problems, they can find some people, but that's about it. So what we have globally speaking, and this is not just a U.S. problem, but globally, is a collision between disinformation, the rise of social media, the rise of authoritarianism and governments that are not telling their electorate the truth, and deepfakes and AI. So it's a world of potential trouble. Things are going to change over the next 20 years, but the best thing to do is to trust nothing 100%. Vary the media diet, read different things, make sure that your intake of information is coming from different sources and not just one place.